Welcome to Tammy's Soul Speak, featuring animal intuitive and medium Tammy Hendricks, offering insight, spirituality, transformation, and clarity to every soul. Now, here's Tammy.
Hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday, wherever you are in the world. If it's morning or afternoon or evening, it's a beautiful day, and I hope it's a beautiful day wherever you are. It certainly is a beautiful day here, and I'm looking forward maybe later to getting out and riding a little bit, and hopefully I'll get to see some bears and maybe some white squirrels as well. Hi, Leslie. It's really good to see you. Hope all is well in your world after coming back from Florida. And then, of course, we had Mother's Day, and that's always such a special time. Oh my goodness, you can feel the collective energy around Mother's Day, and then we have Father's Day. So it's a time when we all share that same energy. It can be quite lovely and poignant for some, and no matter what, it stirs our emotions. Um, hey, Kat, it's good to see you. You're enjoying our Asheville weather. Good morning, Patricia. I'm so glad you're here. Yay. And hey, Claire, good afternoon. Yes, it is afternoon for you. Oh, Deanna, good. Wonderful day there. Oh, well, I'm really looking forward to this show, as I look forward to all of them, and I'm always amazed at how the information drops in, like almost up into the last minute before the show goes on. I'm getting information. So I was super busy this morning and kept adding things, and things kept coming in. So I'm hoping you will really enjoy the discussion that we're getting ready to have on such an interesting subject. Hi, Terry. It's good to see you. Glad you're here. Um, so yes, this idea about forgiveness came to me quite some time ago, about animals and forgiveness, as I've lived the life with my own animals, and so I felt it was important to, you know, us to have just a roundtable discussion. I hope you'll share and comment. I welcome all comments. So, hey Patty, it's 20 degrees. No, you are kidding me. Oh my goodness, you're in California. I would think it'd be warm and sunny, but maybe not where you are. And hey, Janice from Canada, it's good you're here. Um, and Chrissy, yay, you're here. I love your photo of Kirby Douglas. It's just a great photo. He thinks it's a great photo too. But hopefully, I'll be able to get to some questions and comments as we get into the show. But I guess I wanted to start out by saying, we all hear that animals are unconditional love. They're unconditionally loving, and that's true. That is absolutely true. Where have any of you have you seen examples in your own lives where animals have displayed any kind of unconditional love, or have you been in shelters and noticed that, or you know, have you been able to witness it in your own lives? And if you have, if you could throw a couple of comments up, just to let me know, because I'm sure we've all experienced animals who have just been gracious. Actually, they're quite gracious in their ability to display unconditional love, even in light of their own pain and suffering. I know in watching some of these, what's going on in the world, and with Ukraine, it amazes me. First of all, we're all in this together, and the animals are no different from that. And it amazes me, not amazes, but it's just like, wow, they seem to be able to show a compassion when we seem to have more trouble with that. So they're quite the teachers, collectively and individually. Cat, I can't think of an animal that I've had that hasn't displayed it. Bandit was my confidant when I was a teenager. Yeah, no, I agree. From all the animals that have come into my life, they definitely have enlightened me in a way and exampled to me to where I could see what that looks like and get that on a deeper level. Um, so I'm wondering, how do they access that unconditional space, do you think, that we look to them? as an example for. How do they carry that graceful capacity for unconditional love and often display it? Because I've watched it in all the different beings that have come through my life and are still in my life. And I realize that we have that same capacity as well, and that's what they're here to show us. Not that they have it and we don't. We do. We don't seem to be able to access it sometimes as easily as animals, and that's one of their collective soul paths with humans. It's a very, very important one. It's one we all need to get, and certainly now in life and in the world, it this is definitely up for discussion. Unconditional love, compassion, um, in the face of, unbearable suffering. Terry says, yes, I have many times seen that. Deanna, past traumas keep coming forward with Precious, with all that she has gone through. I'm surprised how open and loving she is with us here. I, you know, Deanna, the fact that those traumas are coming up means they're ready to be released, and that's the beauty of the alchemy that is trauma. When we think an event's over, it actually has a life energy to it that, if we allow it to transform, can complete itself. And I'll talk more about that. And maybe it'll help you, as we've talked about all your different animals, help you understand, and be able to help her. So thank you for that. Um, hey, Kat, let's see. Bandit's fur absorbed more tears. All fits of peak. And I'm probably mispronouncing that. And general teenagery, as he was always so steadfast and loving, always there. Aren't they wonderful for that? I always would hug Murphy's neck. I need a sturdy neck to hug. And I remember doing that with Ginger, my dog, when I was a child. That was a really important, like, if I could hug a neck, then I felt safe. I felt secure. So thank you, Joyce. Sadly, recently we had two different sets of bonded cats abandoned. One couple moved out of that apartment and left them. The other two were dumped in our donation bin. Oh my goodness. Gratefully, they ended up at our shelter and they were all so loving. They were adopted within a week. That's one of these stories that it's interesting, because we can easily focus on the fact of, look at what these people did. They left these animals, and at the same time, look what happened. So it's almost like the universe, provides this, what word would I use? Way in and way out. Like, they come in and they leave and they cross over. So how beautiful that there were receptive hearts that took them. And of course, you're witnessing all that. You can see both sides of the story. Thank you for sharing that. Terry, they live in the moment and go with instinct. No, how will this affect me later? True. Absolutely. They live in the moment. They're very present. And that's definitely one of the things we need to work on. We always, as you know, we hear about be present, be in the moment. Animals always are. Um, and that's one of the greatest gifts they've taught me as well. Patty Weeks, animals bring out unconditional love in us and give us a time and space to practice it. Yes. So that, because we see it in them, we're able to see it in us and we get to practice it. Isn't that like just the most remarkable setup? Like, it takes a village, right? It takes a village with all of us. So let's see, Terry, many of those people are doing those things to secure a safe future, sadly, by doing horrible things to others. You know, yes, and we're all making choices. Even the animals are making choices. And that's one of the things I want to talk to you about today, in this story I want to tell you, and something I want to share with you that I've never really shared in the capacity that I'm going to today. Um, and Claire, let's see, Lola is our Romanian rescue whom we think was kicked. However, she is so loving, shows no malice to humans, and retains that innate sense of calmness and unconditional love. Wow, it's a beautiful, beautiful way to acknowledge her and see her. That's quite, it's just you're holding the space for her. You're a compassionate witness so that she can move forward even out of the story that perhaps I was kicked and she has that running in her system. So what I've learned with animals is they didn't come here to live separately from us. They came to experience alongside us. So the pain, the hurts, the joy, the life, everything. And so I would ask you all, do animals hold anger and resentment from abusive backgrounds and deep hurts? Claire would, what with what you just said, it would be, she's had that experience, but she's not holding on to it. So I'd ask you this question, any of you, from a spiritual level, if they are unconditionally loving and they're able to move through it more gracefully, does that mean they bypass things like forgiveness or other types of experiences or soul paths that we are working on? Um, it's a question to think about. There's somebody that wrote in yesterday on the page that I wanted to share with you because it was just like this great springboard from me. And so I think on the post, it was like, do animals forgive? And this person, and to hold on to anger, resentment, this person responded and said, nope, they have unconditional love, and I find that they rarely want to talk about past abuse. Knowing they're safe and loved is very important. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with that. Um, I guess where I got to thinking about that statement is it's in truth. It absolutely is a truth, but it's not, from what I have seen, a complete truth. And here's what I mean by that. Um, it's a looking into the whole picture versus a looking at. So I think it's easy for us to see an animal after they've come to us, and we might surmise that they've had this experience or that. But I think the way I've lived with animals, I'm looking now. At one time, I thought, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. There's so many animals. How do, whatever story I would be running at the time, what I realize now is I had this extreme, unique privilege of living with animals alongside their lives, many, many different ones, many different personalities, all different backgrounds, all different traumas, all different interactions. And so the when I tell you Sasha's story, if we were to connect with her, she may not go into details, but I lived it with her. And I think when we live it with a being, human or animal, that we have to honor that story and we have to honor what effects it had on the animal, what effects it had on us, because those are like the continuing part of the story. Now, you will hear me say time and time again, animals want to be included in telling their story, and our stories help us heal. That goes for humans and animals, absolutely. What is the beauty of the telling of the story is when I tell it to you, for instance, then you take it and listen, and you are affected by that story. And so it may or may not ping different parts of you that resonate so that that healing energy from the story continues on. I think the part where you will also hear me say, and it's going to sound like I'm contradictory, it's not. It's and let's say it's not an either or, it's an and, is that animals, when they tell their story, they're kind of like freed from it. It's when we keep them in their story and we keep telling it over and over again that it actually keeps them, use the word stuck, but it keeps them from growing forward spiritually, growing forward personally like they could. I had somebody recently, I don't know, within the last couple of weeks, was telling me the story of her dog and how she was abused and how it just was horrible. She stopped right at the end of that, looked at me, and she was like, you're probably, every time I talk about this dog, I keep telling that story. I mean, it was like this light bulb went off in her head, and she said, I might need to quit telling that story about her. I think I've told it enough." And it was like, yes, it's important to tell it. For us to tell it is important for the animal to allow them to tell it. And sometimes they're going to say it in behavior and things that we can see. We'll learn the story that way. Just like Claire, maybe that's how you've learned that she might have been kicked just through some of her behavior. But it's important that we allow them to move beyond it. And I think that applies for us as well. So anytime we're talking about that, it's also going to be about us too. Just know that hands down, we never are separate from whatever path they're on. Um, so you know, when you look at your animal, if you're wondering what has happened to them, and you don't feel like you can just get the download of words or whatever, just be very, very observant, extremely observant, and just be a good listener, a good watcher, because they're going to tell you the ways that they need to navigate their healing journey through their behavior, through how they interact with each other, through how they interact with us, through how they interact with life. Um, and I know that speaking about behavior, here's the part I learned really deeply, and it's something I understand because of what I've experienced. So this is going to sound like I'm going down a different road. I'm not. So I want to say when I was in college, I would come back and forth to my home and visit with my mom. And so I would sit there, and I remember sitting on the sofa with her, and I would be wailing about somebody doing something or some behavior, about somebody. And I remember her listening to me. Um, and she would say, okay, this is how they're acting. What's really going on? Because the behavior is just a symptom. And I remember going, "What?" But we did that. It's one of the greatest teachings the gift she ever gave me, um, is helping me see the truth underneath the behavior, the truth underneath the words, the truth underneath that's the real story. So the same holds true with animals. We see their behavior and we could judge it, for instance. They're not doing this or they're doing that. We need to fix them. We need to stop that. But if you stop a minute and look at the behavior, like, this may or may not include all the details that I need to know. And even the details, even if we know the story, it's it's what's beyond that that is the value. It's the great teaching and how we get to understand animals on a much deeper level. It's how that experience affects us in the way we live our lives. So it may affect animals. I mean, I'm thinking of all the myriad of ones that have come. I've had animals with great self-worth issues, um, ones that struggle with friendship, ones that struggle just with humans, and those we would say would be the effects of what they've lived before they've come to us, or even, not to step out too far on a limb, but past lives, as I will share with you with Sasha. Um, so, how we're affected by that event, who we are with that story now becomes part of our living history. It shows up in our behavior, it shows up in all kinds of ways that, you don't have to term yourself an animal communicator, or people communicator for that matter. You all are. You all are, whether and I know from this group and talking to you and working with you have a keen sense of observation, and you're catching like the smallest details. So let me answer a couple of things. So Terry, I think they hold fear and caution out of self-preservation, but not really resentment. They are able to move on from trauma a bit better than us. That's interesting. I don't, I'm wondering if we, and me included, when I say do animals forgive, that's such a general question. And I'm wondering if it's not more individual on where that animal or person is actually in their life path, in their consciousness level. Animals have different consciousness levels. So I'm wondering if it, some do hold on to resentment, what we would term that, or they don't. Um, we're all using human words. But I think, your statement, they hold fear and caution out of self-preservation, that could be said for us as well. I totally agree. And they do move on from trauma much easier than we do. Um, so when we go back to telling our story, whether it's animal or human, it's part of our history, right? We have the past, present, future as part of our history, but it's also it's a springboard to go forward. So if we think about it that way, the story is not only an event and part of our history, but it's also meant to be a springboard. We can use that information, we can use that uh, energy from that story or event to help us grow. It it becomes part of our living energy field called our life. So we can't really separate it out and make it this or that. It's an and. It's always an and. And here's the beauty of the stories and the traumas or whatever the events, all are included. So it's not just the ones that have experienced it first on, like I'm getting ready to tell you about Sasha. It's the story you hear. It's the when we share it. It's the ones who lived it and the ones who hear it afterwards, and then the story becomes an alchemical kind of energetic process. It's amazing when we don't hang on to the identity of the story and we allow it to transform. Sometimes hanging on to the identity, including animals, um, is a safety point. Like we know ourselves that way, it becomes part of who we are. And it's always beautiful when anybody, human or animal, are able to be released from that. Um, hey, Susie. Oh, I'm so glad. um, on lunch break at work. Well, I'm honored that you stopped in. Thank you. Thank you. Um, it's good to see you always, always. So, have you ever had an animal transition that you felt like guilt or remorse or regret? And have you ever experienced situations where, with animals, you felt like you needed forgiveness for some perceived wrong that you've done? I know I have. I know I have in several instances. I remember I had a golden retriever named Tommy, and he got very sick with a very progressive kind of mental issue and disease. I mean, he even ended up falling into the pool at one point because he was so disoriented. Um, but I remember when I finally went to the vet, and the vet helped him release, and I was there. I was seized afterwards with, "Oh my gosh, did I do it too soon? What did I do? Oh my," and then I even had a dream the morning after, he passed, where he was coming to the front door, and, um, he was coming in, and I worked on that dream for several days. Like I was certain that's meant that I let him go too soon and he was trying to come back. It's funny. It's not funny, but it's interesting how our own stuff gets in the mix of what actually happened. And at the time when he passed, I felt and knew it was the right thing to do, but it was that after effect that kicked in that got me. And I know maybe some of you have had experiences like that. Chrissy, I had a cat named, what is it, Malfoy. Um, I had him at my mom's because I was living with my sisters. He got out and was hit by a car. I feel bad because he should have been with me. Oh gosh, that's one we can't get ever around because it's kind of hopeless. Like, it's a done deal. It's a story that happened. Um, and yet we can't, and I know logically we know this, we can't be responsible for every single move everybody makes, but we feel like we are. And the only thing I know is that when animals do, they leave their bodies very quickly. It's like they pop out, they don't feel the pain that, whatever we think they're feeling, they actually pop out and they're watching from a distance. Um, and I just with this, I don't get the sense you were meant to be there when that happened, so you couldn't have prevented it, in other words. But I totally get the feeling. Um, so what I'd like to do with you is tell you a special story. But before I do, Renee, if you could put up Sasha's, I did a little collage. I went into the photo archive and pulled up many Sashas, and I'd like to see um, what you think and feel from seeing her. All right, intuitives, let's pull it together. Tell me what you see in some of these photos, words, phrases, anything. She was a husky, mainly border collie mix. And I wrote a little bit about her in the post while you're looking. She came to me with a broken leg. And I want to say she was about 1.5 when she came. And I took her in. Somebody reached out to me. I didn't stumble on her myself. Um, yeah. So tell me what you think. Tell me what you see in some of these photos. What I picked up, I was like, whoa, is that what I think I'm seeing around there? Leslie, an old soul. Claire, very knowing in life and what was around her. Absolutely. Happy. She is smiling. Yeah. Hmm. Cat, intense laughter. Oh, fierce, loving. Susie, cautious. Difficult to trust people. Susie, attentive, protective, on guard, a little guarded. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you all are nailing Sasha. Um, Deanna wants to be seen yet doesn't trust it moving forward. Anybody see any orbs? It's funny, all these ones that I found were in the snow, but I feel like Sasha was guiding me as she was guiding me this morning to keep adding. Um, like you hadn't completed the story, you tell the whole story. I'm like, fine. Um, Terry, wisdom. Yes. Yeah. Um, Susie Wright, top right picture, orbs. Yep. Seems like there's some more. I don't know if it's that one in the middle at the bottom. I don't think that's her tail. There was one other in here that was orb related. And every time I would take fixtures, a lot of times she would have orbs around it. Yes, in the corner, bottom, middle. Yep, yep, yep. Oh, Claire, absolutely. Things were on her terms, 100%. I learned that really quickly. She was an incredible dog. And like I said, she came to me. Somebody called me. This dog needed help. I had the space. I had, it just was the right thing to do for me to step forward. Your guide. Oh, Julie, you have no idea. Definitely my guide and our guides, actually. I would never be telling this story if Sasha had not, like, nudged and pushed, and it's time. I kept hearing it's time. I'm like, okay, it's time. So she was very independent. The vet, when he looked at her leg, thought that she had that a human had broken her leg. So to say she was not trusting was an understatement. She was also extremely opinionated. Sasha had opinions. Even from day one, she had opinions. Jeff, hey Jeff, it's good to see you. She was a thinker, very aware of what was going on around her. 100%. Nothing got by Sasha. Um, so we casted her legs. Um, Susie, hang on a minute. Susie says, "What are orbs for animals? They're spirit guides. Absolutely, they're guides, and they're beings that will, show themselves uh, in especially." Mm, Sasha was so kind of ethereal that the orbs would show up a lot. So, yes, definitely loving, supportive, showing her connection to the other side. So she got casted with her leg. It was her, I want to say it was her right front leg. She proceeded, I had her in, well, without going into too much detail, I have a day play barn, and from that they can go out and their runs. And anyway, so she would use her cast as a shovel to dig under the fence to go into the bigger part. So that was my introduction to Sasha, that she wasn't, here's the deal, she wasn't to be contained. Being trapped, contained, confined, and she wasn't even confined. She had a pretty big space, but to her it was confined. And so she couldn't be trapped, was her thing. So she used that to dig out. She was very, like, she took ownership of the whole space. There were other animals in there, some that came back and forth to the house. There were other animals in that area, and she was a talker, and she would talk to all of them, and she would tell them straight up, I'm the queen. I'm the one here. This is how it goes. You kind of have to pass through me, even though she couldn't necessarily get to every one of them at all. She had her own area. The only friend she ever had was a collie named Eddie that came, and she was only friends with him because she was pretty much a loner. She was pretty much on her own. She had her own world. And if Sasha allowed you to do something, that was one thing. You couldn't just, like, brush her, for instance, or you couldn't. I tried to groom her one time. The groomer called me and said, "Please come get her," because can't like she is having none of this. So she just I had to respect who she was and who she showed up as, and whatever her personal life had been before me. She would talk next door. So I had a mother pit bull and her son Opie come after Sasha, and the puppy Opie's still here. He's a little basset pit. He's just Opie, if you can picture an Opie. His mother was Megan, and so somebody must have let them out. So at any rate, that's a whole story I will tell you about of how she came to me and how I worked through that process, because it's an interesting one. So at any rate, Megan and Opie came, and Sasha. It's like they knew each other from the beginning. They were in side by side runs, and they had totally different, bigger areas to go out in. But there was something I would learn later, karmic, between the two of them. They knew each other. They recognized each other. And I totally agree, Susie Wright. She says shapeshifter, 100%. So she and Megan would like have little fence talks with each other, and it didn't escalate into anything. They couldn't get to each other, but Sasha would like tell her off and then walk off, and her tail held high, and she'd puff up her big husky hair. And then I heard one time when Megan and Opie were out and Sasha was out and she was looking at him, I heard Sasha said, "Well, if you let me have your boy, I'll teach him how to really be." So you get the drift of the kind of energy between the two of them. And so over the years, Sasha had Eddie as a friend. And she, basically told everybody she was the queen of the area. And then I remember one time she decided she was going to go on a lark, dug under the bigger fence, and literally called Alfie, who was a beagle, really sweet beagle, but he was super adventurous. And she was like, "Hey, you want to come with me? We're going to have some fun." So she takes him, she goes on a lark, and I have a neighbor who calls and says, "Hey, I think I've got your two dogs." And I said, I'm pretty sure that can't be right. Like, I was like, "Dogs don't get out on my property." Um, so they showed up, and sure enough, it was Sasha in the back of a pickup, and there was Alfie, muddy. They had the time of their lives. And so I brought him back to the barn. I put Alfie up, and Sasha was like so unapologetic. She was like, "I had the best time ever." So if that gives you any idea of like how strong-willed and how it was just her way. And that that may be part of the husky border collie. She was extremely bright, just so smart. So if I fast forward many years, Sasha developed diabetes, and she dropped a lot of weight, had diabetes. I would have to give her shots. And even that was a negotiation. I couldn't just give her a shot. She wasn't, it would have to be, "Sasha, can I give the shot to you?" And she would think about it a minute, and then she would allow me. That this went on for, I want to say she had it a couple of years, but her body was not at 7 or 8 years old the powerful husky that she came to me as. But nonetheless, her attitude kind of, I wouldn't say dimmed, but her attitude kind of got quieter over time, until one winter. It was around Christmas. It was December 26th, so right after Christmas Day, and we had this like 12-inch snow in North Carolina. It was like, whoa. Sasha that day was the proudest, the happiest. She was in her element. I'd never seen her so energetic. She was prancing around. She was so happy that day. And I just remember feeling so good that I was seeing that in her. Well, that evening I went and gathered the ones that came to the house. Opie got away from Megan. Mom had a minute. Son comes in with me. And I think at that point it was just Megan and Sasha up the barn. I always went back up to tuck everybody in and tell them goodnight and whoever else was left. Well, I went back up after dinner and stuff, and I couldn't find either one of them. I'm like, that's really weird. They're always there ready for treats. Where are they? So I look out, I don't see, it's dark. I turn on the outside barn lights and I can't find Sasha anywhere in her area. So opened up the back door to the barn and I look out down the hill and I see Megan. Only I see Megan standing over Sasha, who's laying on the ground. It's really dark. I can see red around where Sasha is laying. And all I did was close because in that minute, I knew I had to get help. So I ran back to the house. And when you're in trauma or not trauma, when you're in a situation, even it's like you're running in slow motion. That's how I felt. I ran in slow motion back to the house, opened the door, screamed for help, ran back up. And of course, I have, help coming and families coming. And I look again, and Megan is still standing watching intently Sasha. So I knew I had to get her away from her to figure out what had happened. And I can't remember exactly how I did, but I did finally distract her enough. She looked like make sure Sasha wasn't going to move. And then she came to me and I ended up putting her in her stall, locking her up. And then we went back to take care of Sasha, who was barely alive. And they had gotten in a terrible fight. And we picked Sasha up and we used to be in furniture. So I have furniture pads, by the way, they're the best things ever. So we put her on a furniture pad and she was barely, barely, barely alive. And this is a poignant part of the story too. I looked out and my youngest son was out there with a shovel. He was busy shoveling snow on top of all the blood so I wouldn't have to see that. So back to in the barn. So I'm sitting with her and she's struggling to breathe. And I'm in shock. But it's what's happening. I have to face it. She took one breath and she struggled to take another. And on that third breath, she left her body. And here's what happened. In that third breath and that release, the sweetest, most vulnerable being emerged. One I had not seen in all of her life with me. Her heart opened, her spirit released from her body, and she was free. But had that not happened, I wouldn't, and I was so privileged to be there when it happened that I wouldn't have been able to realize how incredibly sensitive, actually, and sweet she was, and how protected she must have felt that she had to protect her heart from everybody. And, in that moment, I felt a oneness with her that I had not felt the whole time I knew her. I hung on to that story. There's more to the story, especially my response later, my reaction later. I hung on to that story for a while, and it really rocked my world in a very, very big way. And it was a story of blame. It was a story of it was my fault. It was a story of how could this have happened? How could I've not protected everybody? I went down. I went down, down. Um, and then this came to me later. It's really what helped me get through it that I'd really love to share with you in the time we have today. It's an exercise that came because I was rock bottom, grieving for months. I had all kinds of emotions about it. I had anger. I had terrible self blame, and didn't know how to get out of it until one day it dawned on me I need to hear from Sasha, and I can't get through to Sasha because I was a mess. I was so bad. So I actually had this exercise that I want to share with you right now. Right, Terry? Yeah, not your fault. I got that later. But this exercise took me through to that. And what I want to say is this exercise, I'm going to give you steps and I'm going to walk you through the steps. I'd love for you to, this is yours to keep. I'm giving you a gift of what helped me. And the beauty of this particular exercise, and I work with clients every day through with this and exercise like this, is, you know, this is not just for animals who've passed this exercise. It can be with animals still here. It can be with people. It's for sorting through anything that you don't understand that you need to go directly to the source for. And that's what I needed with Sasha. I needed to go directly to that source. It helped me understand myself better, and it helped me understand her better. But also another thing is this can be used with children. Let's say they come home and there's a bully that they're talking about. This is a good exercise to use. So with that said, Renee, if you'd help walk through this, I'd like for you to put that first one up. Thank you. So this is what I did, and I will tell you, I'll read a little bit, and just know we're not going to be able to get through this on the show because I think 5 and 6 will take you a little bit, a hot minute to go through if you're really doing it. But I want to give you like the condensed version. So in my case, naming the animal, who do you want to connect with? Well, I want to connect with Sasha, the Husky Border Collie mix. Why am I saying her breed? Because there's a lot of beings and spirits out there. You want to make sure you're identifying the one you want to. So however you want to identify, there may have been a bunch of Sashas that would have lined up. I needed to talk to my Sasha. So if you got that, and I didn't tell you ahead of time to bring pen and paper, but at this point, maybe in the shows, every time you come with Kleenex and you come with pen and paper. So number 2, after you've named the animal, describe the animal or person. Like I said, it works for both, in 5 or more picture words, strong adjectives, ones that paint a mental picture of who you think that being is. This is the foundation of your story. So for me, for instance, with Sasha, I'm going to name a few. When I was going through this, I had to look up in my journals. Strong, independent, opinionated, willful, haughty, self-serving, brilliant, inconsiderate, bully, aloof, wild, untamed. So I came to that with those picture words, mysterious, that kind of thing. So if you do that, and then the next thing you would do in number 3 is list 5 or more feeling words, emotional descriptions. List your own feelings about the animal or event. What internal reaction are you having? What's your emotional response captured in words? These words reveal what's underneath, and they're the fire of the story. The fire is it's the movement piece of the story. So for me, I had more in my journal, but I just picked this up to share with you as an example. Horror, grief, self-blame, anguish, fear that it could happen again, anger, betrayal. I felt so betrayed, deep sadness, failure. You see how, all these words really relate to, very much self-judgment, and very much where I went with this. So anything goes here. It doesn't matter. You just let it rip, whatever you feel. Number 4. Now, open your heart space and invite your animal or person in. I close my eyes and I go into my heart space. So you open and ask for that animal to be there. So once I had emptied out with the feeling and the picture words, I was ready to talk to Sasha. I was ready to listen. So, whether you see or feel them, let them present whatever way they come. The form that they come is not important. Just know that the invitation, at the invitation is what brings them. Your heart invitation, that's all. It's an energy. Number 5. Here's where the number 5 and 6 might take a hot minute, but I did want to share it because it's the big deal. State their name and complete this sentence. In my case, Sasha, what I need you to know is let the words flow, let the story come through, say whatever you want, don't edit. Don't edit. Don't even make sense. Doesn't matter. This is a time to share what you think and feel and let it come up from your emotional world, your emotional inner world. This is very personal, it's very intimate, and it is between you and your animal or person. So here's basically, if any of you are jotting any of this down, here's me. Sasha, what I need you to know is, Sasha, what I want and need you to know is I'm devastated about what happened. I feel completely responsible. I never wanted you to die this way. I don't understand how this happened and why you would have dug under the fence to taunt Megan. You are weakened by your illness and older. What were you thinking? Obviously, you were thinking about yourself. I'm so angry at you for causing such tragedy and turmoil. Your actions hurt people and animals. I've lost faith in myself, in my ability to keep this as a peaceful sanctuary. I will always be left with such a terrible ending, a terrible memory of you. I tried so hard to give you sanctuary in a loving home. I loved you completely and never held back. This would turn out, I put in parentheses, this would turn out to be a statement I looked at much deeper later. I discovered I had indeed held my heart back at times, the very thing I accused her of doing. So you see, this one can be really, it can take a while, and it can also come in spurts where you're doing this exercise and then you go vacuum and then more comes. That's what happens to me all the time. You just have to follow it. Just if it jumps in, just go and write it down. So after you do that, then you do this. Number 6, ask this question. Sasha, what do you want me to know about what happened that day? And I use that because what I'm saying is go back to what you wrote in 3 and 4. Use those words as a springboard to get started with both 5 and 6. I asked her, is there anything you can tell me about you, about that day that I need to know and understand? In this one, you can always also ask direct questions like I did. I would ask questions and write down whatever comes. This will turn out to be a back and forth exchange, or could. What comes may be a surprise, as it did to me. I was just stunned at what came. But I was ready for it. I wasn't wanting to hear my own story again. I had told my own story round and round in circles and circles about how it was awful. And I mean, this went on for months. So this didn't occur just after. This exercise had to go through several months of my own identity with the process. And I was completely certain that this was going on my permanent animal record. I just was like, I can't, it was hopeless. I can't get beyond this. So if nothing comes, don't be discouraged. Like I said, you may do this later and it pops in when you're vacuuming or grocery shopping. You know, it comes when we're not thinking about it. But if you truly want to know and you open your mind to it, information will come, I promise you. And it doesn't matter if the being is alive, past, it's just whatever you need to sort out. That's the beauty, I think, when you're really ready to listen. So, question. Sasha, what do you need me, to know about the day you died? Why did you do what you did? This is what she said. I've known Megan before. That day I felt the best I ever had. It was cold and the snow invigorated me. I felt alive. I hadn't felt alive in so long. I couldn't feel any weakness in my body. I felt huge and it felt strong and powerful. Megan thought she was the one in charge. I had to show her it was me. I enjoyed my day and waited until everyone was out except the two of us. She knew I was coming. I had told her earlier in the day. This was between us, no one else. When the moon was high, it was dark, I howled and came for her. Her strength and speed surprised me. She was swift on her feet. I underestimated her and she took me down fast. And then as I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know what to say to that, because she was telling me that she chose, and I didn't know animals chose until then. And so I was like, whoa. And then she continued, but I was a warrior and faced her head on. I went out as I had chosen. I went out as a warrior. I remember staring at the words, not believing what I'd heard. So she was saying her death was deliberate, provoked by a feud or provoked by karma, a power struggle. Um, that was another thing. Not only did she tell me that she chose how to go, but that she had karma with this animal that had to be cleared. So I'm like, did you realize what your actions caused, what you left behind? What a tragic mess. What about hurting others? If you had to go because your body was sick, I understand and would never have stood in your way. But I strongly object to how you did it. You hurt me terribly. Again, notice the focus is on me. Her reply is, sorry to upset you. I didn't mean for you or anyone else to be involved. Didn't think of that. Sorry, not your fault. I chose this. I see trail I left behind. But I now see this was important for my own soul path. It made me feel alive to feel again. Up until that day, I hadn't been able to feel in my heart. Here's the other thing she said, and I would do it all again. My spirit released all the hurt and pain those last few breaths. I'm free now. Okay, so another stunning part is, as clear in life as she was in death, acknowledging the trauma she left, but apparently clear about the choice she had made. And that was Sasha all the way, being who she was and open without apology. So here's the piece that I think was very helpful for me. Not all of it was helpful, but her words and her perspective allowed me to see something I had never, ever considered. That animals choose their way out. They have choice. Even if they're going to the vet, it's still part of a soul path choice. Or that they have karma. It didn't ease my loss, but it did help me understand on a deeper level. And it did relieve some of the responsibility that I felt. I have a part two because I had more conversations with her because my journey wasn't completely over then. It was less easy for me to release myself until I got through all of it. So, when you ask that question, just know that it can come quickly. It can come in blurbs. There's no formula here. I'm not a formulaic person. I'm giving you steps, but those steps are so organic. And the last one, number 7, is thank your animal or person for coming forward to share their perspective of the situation, and know that this is an exercise you can do over and over with all kinds of situations, because what you're doing is you're communicating in a way it's a safe space to be heard. Heart communication breaks down barriers and opens us up to really the free expression of ourselves. So let me see. Jeff, wow, that's amazing. I continually find that Daisy amazes me since she transitioned. Animals are amazing souls. I find I didn't give her enough credit while she was here. Though, you know, hindsight's always better, they say, we can see more. And I know for me, um, had I not gone through this with Sasha, and believe me, I never thought I'd tell this story years ago. This happened many, many years ago. I understand though how how much of a teaching story it is, and how part of the forgiveness piece, guess what? It was me having to forgive myself for the perceived things that I did or didn't do. Um, or what I did wrong, this scorecard we keep. So the forgiveness, she didn't blame Megan. Megan, I don't think blamed her. It was just in the moment, this is our role together, and soul contracts. That's right, Deanna, absolutely. But because I lived this with her, if I were to say, did Sasha have resentment? Did she hold grudges? She would have an attitude about things, and she obviously had that kind of thing going on with Megan. Um, so they do, from like maybe a personal level, from that bigger unconditional love space, absolutely. And I would venture to say that Megan was a soul friend. In the end, she was a soul friend, even though it certainly didn't look like that to me at the time. So if you are able, have a situation in your life, this is also good to work through with somebody. It's a back and forth kind of exercise. I did it myself over time just because, and it dropped in, but I had to work, it took me a while to get everything, like I felt complete with it. So there's no right or wrong way to do this exercise. So Renee, if you would put up, I called it the Soul Speak Heart Talk, which is what it is. But if Renee, if you could put up that slide that we shared, that I can explain what that is and that acronym. So Soul Speak Heart Talk, in the way it has come to me and I feel, breaks down heart walls and opens heart doors for true connection. It creates a safe, sacred space to be heard, invites compassionate clarity, dissolves any idea of separation. Whether they're here or there does not matter. Energy is energy. It's a living energy. Reconnects us to what matters most. And this is what came. HEART as the acronym. Hear each animal reveal truths. Trust animals listen keenly. I feel like Sasha's story, telling it now in the way we are sharing this with the exercise, is part of that forgiveness package that this whole show is about, really. It's helping us connect with that space where we can forgive another, because I was pretty angry at her. I object to the way you did it. Like, if you had to go, you had to go, but I had to really look deeper. I had to keep digging deeper. Um, let's see, David. You've got several here. Let me see if I can catch them all. Oh my God, thank you for sharing that. I spoke to you about my foster Tonk before Kelly White's show. Tonk has been, yes, Tonk has been a struggle the 2 years I've had him. Not trusting of people or other dogs, aggressive to the point of biting anyone or any dog that came near, terrified during storms. That's the behavior we're talking about that they show you. I couldn't go near him when there was a storm. He was worked up by other humans or dogs. He had bitten me several times. He has gotten so much better over the past few years. I actually think they go into what I have observed with animals, they go into a space where they're not, that energy is running through them, and you really don't have access to the being that you would know. I know Alex used to do that, and he would go into a different space, and it wasn't the same Alex I knew. However, there's one dog in the neighborhood who drives Tonks nuts. I thought he just didn't like pit bulls, but there's one in the neighborhood that sends Tonk over the top, and I cannot control him. Huh. Now all this makes sense. Yeah, it when we're living these things with our animals and we're seeing behavior, it's kind of hard to put the puzzle pieces together sometime. And I'm ever so grateful for Sasha to have come into my life to be as determined as she was. She's been one of the best teachers, the greatest teachers and guides for forgiveness and for not blaming. And, I feel like in those last 3 breaths she took, in that last one where she released this sweet, sweet energy, um, she forgave as well. Any issues she was holding, she let go of. And so I have a feeling, I have this theory, letting go is both an action at times, but it's also a receptive act. It's something that we have to be open to receive, and then it just lets go of us. She surrendered in those last few breaths to free herself. And, for a while I did look at Megan as the villain. That's the other part of the story and where I take myself. And maybe, we'll talk about that too, because it is it's a teaching story on bigger levels. So yeah, I just, I back in the day when it happened, I never thought I would share this, but the great gift it's giving me, and understanding so much, and understanding myself and blaming myself for things that weren't true. That's kind of like, it's a catch-all for a lot of things. So I hope that helped you. Hope that story has helped you. And Renee, if you wouldn't mind putting up a couple of questions and comments, we're about out of time, but I'd love to get to at least a couple of them that have written in. Oh, now, yeah, and while yeah, there you go. So Pamela Wood, he was 7 and got out of our yard during a storm. He was chipped. We searched for weeks, but think someone took him. It haunts me. I didn't protect him. I get that one. And worry he was hurt or abused. He was everything to me. It's been 20 years and I still grieve. His name was Wooly. I totally understand that, and understand that soul and spirit imprint that he left with you. He was a soul partner, 100%. He's one of a kind, one you would never forget. And what I'm hearing is um, it you weren't it wasn't your fault. Like your story of I didn't protect him. He says you did protect him. So whatever he's referencing is something that he lived with you before. You always protected me, he said. So when we go into story mode, we have to learn that what is the story really pointing to? So perhaps, you know, that's part of what your role in life has been, is to be a protector. I also get that too. I went through that with Sasha. Like how can I not protect Megan? How can I protect Sasha from herself? But it's not our role a lot of times. So um, I think it's okay even after 20 years to still grieve. We're grieving with love, and that's the most significant part because they've made such an impact in us. So I hope this helps. And Chrissy, I wanted to make sure I got to Kirby Douglas. I don't know if you can see in the picture how he is sitting. Is he happy? I feel like he is bored most of the time. Hysterically, when I looked at this, Chrissy, he was like, "I'm in my Zen mode. Can you not see I'm the thinker?" So it's like he's posing, and he really likes that you have put attention on him in this way. He says, "Well, you sort of put too much attention on me all the time. I'm okay. He's like, I'm busy sorting things out in my head." He said, "I'm really, I think about a lot of things." So he's definitely in his zone, and I wouldn't worry that he's bored. He is busy on the inside. So I hope I hope that helps you. And I love the way he's sitting. He's very proud of that photo, by the way. Renee, maybe if we could get to one more. Rhonda, Tacoma, a long time ago, I helped a Cocker Spaniel that was in bad condition. After he became healthy, I placed him in a home where I thought he would be safe and happy. I've since lost touch, but have always wondered if he understood what was happening. Oh my goodness. All the animals, we wonder, if they're even if they're unconscious, do they really realize what I was doing? They absolutely do. And he is ever so grateful for you to have shown him kindness, to have gotten him well so that he could go to his next job, he says. So, what we see is, oh, we're abandoning them, or oh, we're letting them go for something and we shouldn't. They see it entirely differently. They see it as part of the role they're here to play. So I hope that helps. Well, I am out of time and I didn't get to half of what I wanted. Well, I did. I got to a lot of it. My main thing, I really wanted to talk to you about that forgiveness piece and how animals release, and how that teaches us how to release as well. I'll be forever changed because I was graced that Sasha came into my life. Her life and death have taught me so much about everything and about myself as well. And again, I hope that if you're concerned or struggling with the forgiveness piece, try this exercise. I really think it'll help. And again, it can be taught to children. Wouldn't that be great for children to be able to go through this and with sort things out? It empowers you. It gives you, makes you feel less of a victim, and it helps you realize that you have your own way to connect, and it's valid as if we're sitting here talking right in front of each other. So thank you to all of you for coming. I always enjoy our time together and all your wonderful comments. And please let me know how the exercise goes if you try it. I'd love to hear some feedback from you, and we can always, take it a step further and do it some more. So thank you, and come. I think next time, I didn't look. May 20. I don't know. It's in 2 weeks. My next show is. Sorry, I didn't look at the date beforehand. But I will be back. And in the meantime, let me hear from you. I'd love to. Let's keep the conversation going. See you next time.
You've been enjoying Tammy's Soul Speak featuring animal intuitive and medium Tammy Hendricks.